Check, check. Can you hear me? All right. Hmm? It's on. It's on. Okay, well, it's showing up here. All right, friends, if you have not yet had a chance to do the survey, please take like 30 seconds, get those responses in. It just helps me kind of tailor what we'll talk about today. I do have a whole slideshow prepared, but it's just kind of bullet points. So I just want to see, where do y'all want to spend more time, less time?
I can sit you. I'm gonna see if I can turn these off.
Okay. If you guys don't know, my boyfriend Josh, we co-own Muscle and Mindset together. He's gonna be our tech support today. Huh? Women in STEM. Honestly, the setup y'all have here is so nice. I literally just plugged in the HDMI and all the things lowered automatically. I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm in a spaceship. It's awesome. My college was not this nice.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to State University of New York at Fredonia.
Okay.
So I'll talk about my background in the first couple of slides here. Does anybody still need the link for the survey, or can I pull the next slide up?
That's the abbreviation.
All right, cool. So today, our lecture is just going to be about developing real strength. I'm really trying to tailor things to what I feel like college students, athletes need to know. I have been coaching student athletes for 3 years now. And before that, I was a public school teacher. Many of you don't know that about me, so I'm super familiar with working with young people. As you know, I own Muscle and Mindset along with Joshua. I'm a senior national coach with USA Powerlifting. Hello, come on in. And I'm a level 2 coach with USA Weightlifting as well. But my wheelhouse is definitely powerlifting. I'm excited that we also have some bodybuilder representation here today. And I really tried to keep all of today's advice as generic as possible to serve as many different kinds of athletes as we can. So I grew up as a competitive dancer. I did 13 years of dancing. I started at the age of 5. I did that all the way through high school. And if anyone has a background in dance or any athletics, you probably know that a lot of the times the students also become the teachers from a young age, right? And so I did that from the age of 12 and up. I taught music for 10 years. So I have 2 degrees in music education, bachelor's and a master's degree. That's what I did in New York. And my earliest experience in the fitness realm was I taught yoga at Core Power. I'm sure you all are familiar with Core Power, being Coloradans. And then I became a personal trainer after that. I did those things part-time when I was still a full-time teacher. And once I got the bug of powerlifting, it was kind of game over for teaching at that point. That was when I went and I went and did my initial coaching certificate with USA Powerlifting, started kind of specializing my personal training more towards barbell-specific movements, and I've been doing that since 2016. So at some point I had a career pivot. I decided to leave teaching in November 2019. Think about the timeline of what happened right after that. COVID happened. And imagine teaching 6th grade orchestra through a screen. I really didn't want to do that. And so I thanked my lucky stars that I got out when I did. During the pandemic, there were some really awful things happening to gyms, right? Gyms were being forced to stay closed. I had been coaching people out of our home garage, which was a 1-car garage. And so I lost all of my clients during COVID. Nobody wanted to be in person. There was a lot of fear around interacting with people, even though we could have the garage doors open and everything. And so I kind of had to ask myself, okay, what do I do now? I just left a career, a 10-year teaching career, to do this, and now I can't do this. So to pick up the pieces, I started teaching classes in the park. It started with yoga because it's really easy to invite people into a yoga practice. There's a lot more fear around barbell training, as I'm sure you've experienced in talking with your friends about what you do. And so it started with that. And then I kind of developed a group of people that became regulars at regular class times. And then Josh and I started talking kind of that summer of 2020 about opening a gym together, and that was the birth of M&M 1.0. So we looked at, I think, 2 or 3 spaces, and hi guys, come on in. Come on in. We looked at 2 or 3 spaces, and the first space is actually the one that we wound up renting out and building our gym in. Already mentioned that. We opened the gym in 2021. It took about 3 months to build out that initial gym space. A lot of young people tell me that they think about opening gyms someday, and I will be very honest, this is a very hard process. I think a lot of gym owners make it look easy, but when you consider the cost of equipment and all of the logistics of building and understanding where things need to go, what equipment is going to get used the most, those kinds of details, it is actually a very grueling process. When we first opened, we would take anyone who wanted to learn how to work with a barbell. Hi, guys. Anyone who wanted to work with a barbell, we just had to build up our membership, pay our rent, figure out how to run a gym. I did miss a step in my career where when I left teaching, I took on a full-time management role at one of the Core Power studios, and that was a really good opportunity for me to learn how to run a gym. And so a lot of that was very transferable to opening our own space. But then in 2023, we felt like we had a good base of membership. Enough people were interested in competing or were already competing by that point that we felt like we could kind of niche down with our brand and our marketing. And that's why we launched a whole new website that year that Josh built out. And we were saying, okay, we do barbell sports now. We do Olympic weightlifting and we do powerlifting. And now we're at M&M 2.0. How many of you have been to our gym already? I know a lot of, yeah, almost all of you. Awesome. So our new space is a little bit bigger than our old space. It's about 20% bigger. We have some more equipment. We have space for new equipment to come as well. If you guys ever want to talk about the logistics of opening your own gym, just shoot me an email. My email will be on the last slide. I'm always happy to share some of that information and knowledge. Also, the mistakes we made along the way. But that's not what this talk is about, so I'm not going to dwell on those. We cater to a very large demographic of people. We coach about 50 powerlifters. Some are recreational, many are competitive. You know many of our competitive powerlifters already. Around 30 Olympic weightlifters as well. That's about 50-50 breakdown of recreational versus competitive. I currently have 10 collegiate athletes coached at M&M, 3 high school athletes, and 1 exceptional 10-year-old who is the daughter of one of our masters athletes. How many of you have met Belle or you saw Belle at the state championships? Yeah, she's pretty stinking awesome. And then we have around 20 open gym members on top of that. Some of you are some of our open gym members. Big philosophy for us is you are a human first and an athlete second. We'll get more into the weeds of this in some of the mindset slides that are going to come later on. But it's really hard to perform well in the gym or on a platform if you are not taking care of your basic needs first, right? We provide detailed technical coaching support, and we kind of provide that in layers. Like, I'm not going to teach you all of the little components of how to snatch on day 1. We're going to ease you into that and make sure you have strong foundations before we build on top of those foundations. And then I strongly believe in having an inclusive and positive training environment. Everybody wants to look forward to going to training. Everybody wants to look forward to seeing their friends. How many of you have a social community at the gym? I definitely have a social community at the gym, right? And while these are technically independent sports for the most part, they still create a world and a realm of comfort and safety. In the summer of 2023, that's when I first started working with the CU Denver powerlifting team. Randy and Walton were the presidents of the team that year, or captains, I don't remember what their exact title was. And they didn't have a coach. They had kind of lost the coach from the year before. It's a long story that I won't get into now, but they were looking for a coach, and so the stars aligned and we came together at the right time. I had just reached out to their academic advisor, and she was like, I'll put you in touch. And we had a meeting, and it felt like it was a really good fit. That first year, we brought 11 qualified for CNATs and 10 went to CNATs. And that was my first time bringing a big team of people to a national event. Learned a lot of lessons, like 10 is too many. 10 is way too many. And I think they learned a lot that year too, because that was the first year they had also brought a huge team. I did coach them for another year after that. There was a changeover in leadership, and I decided to take a step down, and we were preparing for our gym move that year too. So we were looking for spaces, actually really time consuming, to find the right space when you already have a community built. Last year, one of my big focuses, in addition to finding the space for the new gym, was starting our collegiate athlete scholarship program. And this is still new. We are still in the fundraising stage of this. But what I was finding is people your age love barbell sports. You all get good at barbell sports really quickly, but you don't have a lot of money to buy gym memberships and pay for coaching and go to meets and pay for travel. So this is one way that we're trying to help fill that gap for all of our local powerlifters, weightlifters, and bodybuilders. Like I mentioned, we're currently in the fundraising phase. Our interest list is open for submissions. It is not a commitment, and I'll show the link for that on our last slide too if you guys are interested. As I mentioned, former teacher, so we have objectives today. First, we're going to identify some of the common pitfalls of collegiate strength athletes. A lot of you gave me some interesting information in the survey, so I'll try to address as many of those as I can. We want to understand the elements of an effective training plan. A lot of you are already on structured training, which is great, but not all of you. And so I'm glad that we're going to talk about that today. Understanding the best practices for longevity of sport. On the survey, many of you mentioned injuries, and so I think we're going to gain a lot from that part of this lecture. And then the last piece will be best mindset practices for any kind of athlete. I don't think these are specific to strength athletes. All right, let's dig into our list. Common pitfalls. Not understanding how much volume, intensity, or frequency to use in your program. So I saw a bunch of you put one of your primary mistakes when you first started training was ego lifting. And ego lifting means to me you're just going too heavy too often, right? That's a really common thing that we see, especially from your age group. And it's because you're excited, right? You're learning, you're building confidence through these sports, and you're learning kind of what are the limits of what you can do, how hard can I push myself in the gym, and it feels good to do that, right? Until you get injured. Underestimating the importance of technical efficiency and execution. We'll get a little bit more into efficient movement patterns, because I don't tend to be of the mindset, all the research says that there's not really techniques that are better than others. Let's use the example of deadlifting with a round back, right? A lot of people think that you should never do that. But at the same time, if you always do that and you're smart about your load management, the research says you're probably not actually going to hurt yourself, or at least not hurt yourself any more often than you would otherwise if you were using different techniques. Oh yeah, this is a big one. Taking advice from other people your own age and your own experience level, right? Your buddy started lifting 6 months before you did. Yeah, they have a small modicum of more knowledge than you do, but not a whole lot more, usually. This is one that I've experienced many times working with young people and adults and all ages. It is not just college-age athletes. But hiring a coach and then not trusting them to lead you through the process, right? You gotta communicate with us. We can't help you if we don't know what's going on. Sometimes I find out someone's injured 2 weeks after the fact, and I'm like, well, no wonder I haven't seen any videos from you, but why didn't you tell me? Read that one again. Going off program without consulting your coach first. I do think there's time and place, right? When to go off program, when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. And I won't say it's always a hard no, but sometimes you gotta ask permission, right? Or be like, hey, do you think it's appropriate for me to do this? And that kind of goes along with the communication piece. Underestimating the importance of recovery and fatigue management. I remember being your age and feeling invincible. where you're just like, I could go forever. My energy is great. I'll just have another monster, and I'm going to get through another 2-hour session. Eventually, that's going to wear off, and you won't be able to do that anymore. Yeah, social media, man. I feel so privileged that I did not grow up with social media being super popular yet. Yes, Facebook was around then. But we weren't posting training on Facebook, right? And please know this is not about you specifically. Caroline slaps her hand over her mouth. But you have to like really be invested in the training, right? Image is one thing, but remember that social media is just a highlights reel. You're only ever seeing the good stuff. You don't always see the bad stuff. I do think that's changing. You know, the elite lifters that you follow, the elite athletes that you follow, I think with more of a spotlight on something like mental health, for example. Maddie Rogers is a great example of this, right? Where a couple years ago, she was like, yeah, I'm not doing it right now. I can't do it right now. I'm not in a personal place emotionally, mental health-wise, to compete at a world level. And I respect her so much for being so public about that experience, and think about all the people that were influenced by that too. Oh yeah, placing self-worth into hobby sports. I'm gonna dwell on this quite a bit today. We pay to compete in these sports. Therefore, we are not professional athletes, right? I can't tell you how often I say to someone like, hey, it's just weightlifting. It's just powerlifting. It doesn't have to be your sun and moon and your stars at all times. And again, time and place. I'm sure there's a million things you might add to this list, but that's all I have so far. This talk is gonna be broken down into 3 segments. The first is gonna be programming. The second is gonna be longevity. And then the last piece is gonna be mindset. And I see the clock and I realize I'm already 20 minutes in, so I'm gonna go a little faster. Training versus exercise. How many of you have friends that don't lift with a barbell? I hope everyone has a friend that doesn't lift with a barbell. Exercise. Usually focused on general physical well-being, right? Get that heart rate up, get your blood pumping. Achieving or maintaining some level of fitness. Burning calories, right? A lot of people set a goal like fat loss or weight gain, and that's what they work towards. And often just achieving fatigue or a feeling of exhaustion. You know what comes to mind when I think of exercise? CrossFit is exercise. Versus training. Training is goal-focused, right? We are always working towards some kind of goal. We are collecting data, and we are using that data to track progress and to inform future training plans. It requires discipline, not motivation. And you support those goals in your lifestyle outside of training. The goal of training is always adaptation, right? We're trying to change something. You have physical adaptations, whether it's trying to add muscle mass to your body, remove muscle mass from your body. We have neurological adaptations. Your brain, your nervous system is in charge of your force development, your rate of force development. And then we also have emotional and mindset adaptations that come along with the training process that may not be a direct result of training, but support our training. Okay, this is gonna be a long list. I'm gonna go through it quick. Elements considered in programming. We wanna look at how old are you and how long have you been training? If you are a brand new athlete to training, do you need a highly specialized program? Probably not. Exercise selection. We wanna make sure we are picking the right exercises for where you are at. Again, I'm not gonna have someone doing a full snatch from the floor on day 1 of snatching. When you are selecting these exercises, you want to be looking at skill or mechanical deficiencies, sticking points or strength imbalances, like if you pull sumo and you get stuck on the floor, you should probably do some deficit work, right? Muscle mass deficiencies. Minimum effective dose and maximum recoverable volume. If you write your own program, please write those 2 terms down so that you can look at them later. Minimum effective dose. What do we think that means? Does anybody have a strong, educated guess? Yeah, what you think?
Like what keeps your muscles from atrophying?
Sure. What?
The least amount of workout, good results.
I like that. Yes, the least amount of work you can do to still move towards the goal that you've set, right? How about MRV, maximum recoverable volume? Caroline?
Definitely not going 110% and like killing yourself all the time. So the volume, that is the maximum that you can recover from.
Totally, yep. How many reps and sets can I do before I start seeing negative results or diminishing returns on my results? So like, you know, let's say you're a barbell beginner, not necessarily power lifter, but everybody's familiar with the starting strength program, the 5x5 starting strength. You do 5 sets of 5, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, and bent over row, I think is the other one. Great place to start when you're a beginner and you're just building up that initial work capacity. But now, you know, I've been powerlifting for nearly 10 years. Can I do 5x5? I could, but why? Why would I expend all of that fatigue and all of that volume when I can make smarter programming decisions because I'm a more experienced lifter? Frequency, intensity, volume, and tonnage. These are all terms that you might want to be familiar with. Frequency is how often are you doing a specific lift, right? How often do you squat? How often do you snatch? How often are you hitting legs, etc. Intensity, we're talking about the load that you're working with, right? Some people might use an auto-regulation system like RPE or reps in reserve. Some people might use something like percentages. Depends on where you're at, depends on what your goals are. Volume. Volume is usually just sets times reps. Volume is related to tonnage. Tonnage is sets times reps times weight. And so these are all different ways that you can kind of track what we'll eventually talk about as progressive overload. External stressors should be considered when you are looking at your program. Your general overall stress. Training is stress, right? You only have so much capacity for any form of stress. So your general stress, school, work, family, relationships, pets. If your pet is sick, you're stressed. You know, anything can be considered your general stress. Your emotional state should be considered too. If you use a system of auto-regulation like RPE, and let's say I'm grieving the loss of my grandmother or something that I was close with, is my RPE going to help me determine what weight I should choose because I'm grieving? Yes, a system of auto-regulation can be really useful in that scenario. Life events. The loss of your grandmother can be considered a life event. The loss of a pet can be considered a life event. Or you move, right? Or you transfer schools. Extra physical activity, basketball, hiking, biking to school, any physical activity you do. Is this about Declan? Any physical activity you do is going to contribute to the overall stress that you can tolerate. Recovery and fatigue management. I'm just gonna pull all those up at the same time. Sleep, man, that's the big one with your age group. Having enough hours in the day, right, to study for all the exams, get all the projects done, do your part-time job, do your 2 hours of training, and still have time for your friends, your family, and everybody else in your life. Nutrition. This one's tricky too. I know plenty of adults my age, I'm about to be 37, plenty of adults my age that still struggle with the nutrition piece. Alcohol consumption and drug use. Yes, those still are considered forms of stress that are gonna affect how you perform in the gym. If you're hungover, are you gonna perform super well that next morning? Probably not. I'm gonna say some people have their best days in the gym, but I'm not out here telling you y'all should go drink and then train the next morning. And therapeutic strategies like sauna, body work, physical therapy. We'll get into the details of those later. Okay, for those of you who write your own program, this is a good place to take some notes. Organizational structure of programming. A macro cycle. You're familiar with the prefix macro, right? It's the largest structure. This is going to be your longer overarching time frame with a goal that can be achieved usually in 12 to 16 weeks. Doesn't have to be 12 to 16 weeks, but if you're setting like a big goal, make sure you give yourself enough time to achieve that goal. So an example, I want to improve my ability to pull under in a full snatch. I want to build my gluteus medius, that specific muscle in my glutes. or I want to improve my sticking point past the knees in the deadlift. These are just some examples that like I might build a 12 or 13 week cycle out of. Mesocycle. These are your blocks of time. I would say the majority of powerlifting coaches I know and weightlifting coaches I know, these are going to be 4 to 6 weeks, and they use some form of periodization, whether it's, you know, strict periodization or some form of undulating periodization, which we'll talk about next. And then your microcycle, these are the bricks that make up each block, right? So most of you probably do a 4-week block or a 6-week block, and then your microcycle would be 1 week. It's how many days you train before repeating your routine again. Guiding principle of a good program, progressive overload. How is your program going to be harder week over week, right? This is a super simple concept, and there are so many different strategies that you can use to make your programming harder. Option 1, you can increase your volume and keep the load the same. Potential issues? That can't be progressed more than a few weeks before we surpass that maximum recoverable volume, you know? Like for someone like Wyatt, Wyatt's a big, strong guy, and he can tolerate a good amount of deadlift volume, but we don't see the same thing on your squat, for example. And so even each individual lift, you may see that there's a different MRV. This is best used for improving your work capacity and your tolerance to volume. So would you do this with a heavy weight? Probably not. I would not advise doing that with a heavy percentage. Option 2, increase load, static volume. This is your starting strength program, your standard 5x5, right? Potential issues, this is a big one. If you start too heavy, you're gonna run into some recovery issues, right? How many of you have used percentage-based training on your strength work? Cool. How many of you have used auto-regulation like RPE or reps in reserve? How many of you have done both together? Great, that's a system I like a lot. So the static volume, it works really well for beginners, right? You don't know what you're capable of yet as a beginner. You don't know how much volume you can tolerate yet, and you're gonna start with a lightweight. Most people are gonna start with a lightweight when they start out because there's that fear element of working with a barbell for the first time. And that'll work really well for them for a while, but eventually you're gonna plateau, right? There's a reason people move past the starting strength phase. Option 3, this is one I mentioned earlier. Undulating intensity and volume. So an example of undulating, it means that we're doing some combination of adjusting the volume and adjusting the intensity week to week. So example, I've got a heavy set of 3 at an RIR 2, doesn't matter what the lift is. Heavy set of 3 at RIR 2, followed by a 3x5 at a range of 70 to 75%, or RPE 6, RIR 4. This is what we use most often in powerlifting. Best practices for self-programming. Does anyone in the room write their own program? I'm curious. Okay, good, a good chunk of you, good. Assess your weak points and be honest. I think that's one of the trickier things when you're starting out on your own, is being able to kind of look at your movements and say, okay, what are my weak points based on kind of where you get stuck or where you may see strength imbalances, because you just don't have that experience and that knowledge of watching bodies yet. Select exercises that target them, right? The example I gave, you pull sumo, you struggle off the floor, do some deficit work, right, with some lighter weight to really strengthen that range of motion. If I have someone who really struggles to squat to depth, for example, what would be a variation of squat that I could give them that might help them with that? Can anybody think of something? Damon.
Pause squat.
Pause squat, yeah, definitely. I could think of a couple more too. You want to add, Clemente?
Oh, tempo.
Ooh, tempo. I like tempo, sure. I think there's one more. Yeah. Pin squats. Jaden, right? Jaden, yeah. Pin squat, yes, definitely, where you're gonna set the pins at depth or even past depth. I think another good one would be box squats too, with an adjustable box where it forces them to sit all the way down so they get familiar with what that range feels like. Start with minimum volume to introduce new exercises. I saw some people had some questions about deload weeks. This is a great example of how to use a deload week when you start a new block of training. Usually, and I'm sure you've all experienced this at some point, being experienced athletes, usually when you start a new block, you're introducing new exercises, right? And you're gonna be sore from those new exercises. Even if you're conditioned to them, like let's say you normally do regular squats and that now you're doing pause squats. Because of the change in the time under tension, you're gonna be sore anyway. So introduce them with a lightweight. Here are some recommendations. For big compound movements, 3 sets of 5. For Olympic movements, 3 sets of 3. You don't need to be doing 5s. And then for isolated movement, something where there's only a single joint moving, like a bicep curl, not leg press, hamstring curl, 3 sets of 10 would be a good place to start. And then you can always adjust your volume from there. Pick your strategy for progressively overloading. How are you going to go about doing that? Are you going to change the volume and keep the load the same? Are you going to change the load and keep the volume the same? If you're just starting out, I mentioned this already, your strategy for progressive overload does not matter a whole lot, right? You never touched a barbell before, you never touched weights before, you're going to get stronger from pretty minimal work in the gym. You just need exposure to weights. Any questions about the programming stuff? No? Cool. Longevity. Elements of longevity. Fatigue management. So we kind of touched on this with the programming already. We want to manage the volume, manage the intensity, and manage that frequency. If I mentioned my wheelhouse is powerlifting. It is the sport I know the best, and it's the sport I pay the most attention to. Agata Shitko. It was announced by her coach that she does 5 SBD days every week, right? And then there was this whole movement like 4 months ago where everybody was like, I want to try doing that. And what did we see? We saw a lot of burnout and we saw a lot of injuries start to happen, right? So, because it's too much frequency. So you do have to be mindful of what you can tolerate. So if you're not keeping some kind of log of your training, like let's say you're going in and you kind of have a general idea, but you're kind of winging the details, start writing that stuff down so that you have a record of what you've actually done on the previous weeks. Vary your movement patterns. Yeah, conjugate method actually does this really well. When you vary your movement patterns, so let me give you a really simple example of this. Let's say I have 2 squat days every week. On the first day, I might do my regular competition back squat, and on my second day, I might do like a wide stance sumo squat or a front squat. Why might I do that, and why might that help my longevity? Ryan?
Changes joint stresses?
Yes, exactly. Changes the stress on the joints, right? It stresses different insertion points, and it stresses the muscles in new ways at different angles. If you are not thinking about movements in like angles and lever patterns, start noticing those when you're watching bodies around the gym on your rest periods. Programming primary, secondary, and tertiary days can also be really useful for this. Primary would be whatever you're gonna do in competition, right? I know bodybuilders, this might not apply to you guys so much, but powerlifters and weightlifters, this definitely applies to you. What are you actually gonna do in competition versus what might just support your competition movements? You're gonna do those supportive movements on the secondary and the tertiary days. Efficient biomechanics and positions. So these are some of the greatest hits that I see. If you don't give them attention from the beginning, they can cause some problems with pain later on. People with a poor overhead position. I can't tell you the number of people age 35 plus that come to our gym and they want to learn how to snatch, and their overhead position looks like this, right? Because they can't get here yet. I'm not going to put a heavy weight over their head, right, until we work on that mobility and that mechanical pattern. Bench arch. We arch our backs in bench press. One of the big reasons is because it's healthier for our shoulders. And so if you're not taking that time to really work on optimizing what you have, and not everybody has a huge arch, not everybody's Aussie, who's not here, I see. But if you don't have it's one thing if you don't have a ton of potential, but you do have to try to optimize the potential that you do have for the sake of your shoulders. Squat depth. People who really struggle with squat depth, usually there's something going on in their glutes, right? Or their hip structure that needs to be addressed in their either physical therapy or some form of mobility work. And then overall joint stability. We get a lot of people, there's more and more research coming out to say that everybody should be lifting weights, right? Everybody can benefit from lifting weights. We know this now. And so I get a lot of people who have never touched a weight before and they're hypermobile. So what you might see is the people who can kind of bend their elbows backwards a little bit or their knees overextend a little bit. And so we need to really make sure that they're working on the joint stability to keep them safe when they're doing those bigger compound movements. DIY recovery routines. What can you be doing? Foam rolling, stretching, massage gun. The trade-off of getting strong and having a lot of muscle mass is you get stiff, right? Your joints get stiff. And so then we don't move as efficiently as we can when we're nice and pliable and our muscles are mobile. Heat therapy. Get in that hot tub. Get in that sauna. Get in that steam room. I know cold plunges were all the rage a couple of years ago, but don't do that after training. It's fine if you want to do that for, the mental components and the stress tolerance and the cortisol tolerance, but don't do it after training. All the research says that just prolongs how long we can actually, prolongs the healing process, if that makes sense, because cold reduces inflammation, but inflammation tells the body, hey, we need resources to heal and recover this tissue. Nutrition. Figure out your nutrition. If you don't know how to count macros, learn how to count macros. If the only thing you count is protein, then just count your protein. I count protein and I pay attention to fiber. That's all I do now. Mentioned I grew up as a competitive dancer, so I don't track everything. This is a huge one, stress management. What are some ways that you can manage stress aside from going to the gym? Caroline.
Talk therapy.
Love it. Talk therapy. Yeah.
Meditation.
Meditation. Yeah, meditation is awesome. Kat.
Doing something you enjoy.
Doing something you enjoy. Like walking in nature. Literally just going for a walk can pull your stress levels down. Sleep. Love it. Call them out.
Get a cat.
Pets. Literally petting your cat can bring your cortisol down, yes. This could be an endless list, right? And only you can decide what's gonna help you feel calm, pull the adrenaline down, and pull that cortisol down. But those are all great recommendations. Oh, let me go back to that one. You should have other hobbies outside of the gym. I'm gonna stress this one quite a bit today. Because again, these are hobby sports. Pain happens. No one can guarantee that you're never going to experience pain in your training, right? You guys are young. Some of you have been injured before, but many of you have not been injured before, and you're still in that romance phase with your training, right? It is likely going to happen at some point in your life, and it really makes a difference if you have good people in your corner. So these are some just recommendations of who you might want to have in your corner. Some kind of manual body worker, massage therapy, acupuncture, PNF or active stretching, scraping. Physical practitioners, like manual physical therapy, where they're actually working on the tissue with their hands. Specialists, like a pelvic floor PT, a neurological specialist. Dry needling, maybe chiropractic. There are good ones. There are not so good ones as well. The not so good ones are the ones that want you in their office every 2 weeks. Nutrition experts. Hire a nutrition coach if you can. Or if you have resources on campus, or your friend is a dietetics major, go talk to them, go ask them questions. You guys are in this unique time in your life where there's a ton of people learning how to be experts around you, right? Use those resources that you have. And a dietitian, of course, if you have more serious needs or you need someone to look at your blood work, help you with food allergies, things like that. Emotional experts, like therapists and counselors. A sports psychologist. Please note that your coach is not this person. We wear many hats as coaches. We are not qualified to give you mental health support. We do the best we can, but we are still just human, and we are not experts in this. Oh, that should be number 3, not number 2. I can count. Okay, quick self-survey. I'm going to ask you guys to open a fresh note on your phone or take out a piece of paper real quick. Every day, you wear many hats. I want you to list 8 different roles that you are. Who are you every day? 8 different people. Give you some examples there. All of those probably apply to you in some way. I see a lot of smirking around the room. I love that. Who needs more time? Nobody? Okay, great. Next step. You're going to number your lists now. Number 1 is the most important. Number 8 is the least important. Now, no one is saying that you hate number 8. They're all important, or you wouldn't have written them down, right? Yeah. It's okay. The point is just prioritize who you are, Trinity. Bless you. Yeah. Welcome to life, friends. Roommate could be friend if you're friends. I don't know.
If you're not friends with your
Debatable.
Fair. Very fair. All right. Just by a quick show of hands, it's okay if you're not done. How many of you have athlete in the 1, 2, and 3? Cool. How many of you have athlete around 4 or 5? And how many of you in the bottom 3? Good. That's a good mix. That's a good mix. So I just want you to make a mental note of where you prioritize that identity as we go through these next few slides. Okay. Might need to work on your mindset if. I had a feeling this one would resonate. A bad session sends you into a spiral or a tantrum, or it affects how you show up in your relationships for the rest of the day, the week, whatever. Jaden's walking out. Bye, Jaden.
That was very good. I loved it.
See ya. You might need to work on your mindset if an injury that prevents you from training at 100% puts a dark cloud over everything in your life. You frequently blame your coach, program, or external stressors for your rate of progress in training. Your anxiety around competition day prevents you from performing well. All right, let's get into it now. Oh yeah, that one's important. Can't forget that one. Training is where you find the majority of your self-worth. You might need to work on your mindset if. It's not letting me click. Hold on. There we go. All right, elements of training mindset. General stress. I know I keep stressing the stress, but it is important. Relationships, recovery, like illness, insomnia, emotional state, like depression or anxiety, grief, distractions, Comparison complex. I don't know anyone like that. Expectations. So I want to dig into the expectations piece a little bit, because a lot of time when you have an expectation when you walk into training, right, like you got plenty of sleep, you ate all your meals, you meal prepped and everything's good, you feel great walking into the gym, and then you get onto the bar and you don't feel as good as you expect to feel. Does that immediately make you disappointed? Sometimes, right? Sometimes. So I try to be super, super careful about how I write my instructions in every program, because I know that even just hearing my voice in their head, that's going to set an expectation for how that session's going to go, or what they think I expect in that session. Or you take a lift and it's an RPE 10 and you thought I was going to be an RPE 7. Does that make you immediately disappointed in the session? Sometimes. Consistency and discipline can affect your mindset. This is not an exhaustive list. We could go on. There's so many things that can affect your mindset, right? Because your mindset is your emotional state and how you manage it. LOL, neurotic athletes. They're usually perfectionists, very type A individual. Am I describing a lot of people who are attracted to barbell sports? Yup. They like to control all the variables as closely as possible. They try to master everything all at once, which is just not going to happen, right? They catastrophize a less than perfect performance. They sacrifice relationships or deadlines or other things to get their training in and try to get their training to be as perfect as possible. They end up spiking their own stress when their training isn't perfect. This is not a realistic way to train long term. This is a great way to burn out. We are not professional athletes. We literally pay to compete in these sports. So always, always, always keep the big picture in mind. We are not professional athletes. These are hobby sports. The ego versus the artisan mindset. The ego mindset is a comparison mindset. You tend to lead with emotion, right? You have an emotional reaction to how your training feels, or you see someone else at the gym getting stronger faster than you, and you immediately go, oh no, I'm terrible at this. Like I said, someone stronger comes along, athlete has a mentee B. Everybody knows what mentee B means? Mental breakdown. Someone your age recently told me they didn't know what mentee B meant. Remember that, Damon? You have a bad session, quote unquote bad session, results in a mentee B. Can't control all the variables to a detailed degree, mentee B. Why am I not as strong as so-and-so? Do these sound familiar to some of you? Or you know someone like this, perhaps? They allow their training performance to control their mood and their mindset. The artisan is the mastery mindset. You lead with logic. You understand that training is a scientific process, right? There are scientific principles behind strength training and training as a process itself. Training is a scientific process of data points. Every training session is just a series of data points for us. We collect the data and we move on. They see failure as an opportunity for learning and growing. In the moment, you might still have a little mentee B even as an artisan. That's okay, but you eventually have to take that deep breath and move on. What did I learn from this experience? Okay, I missed my squat today. I missed my bench today. I missed my snatch, whatever. What did I learn from that experience? What went wrong? How can I do this better next time? It allows your training to just be data that informs future programming. The balanced athlete mindset. Okay, here's where we're gonna have our heart-to-heart for everyone. You started this hobby because it was fun. As soon as it stops being fun, athletes burn out and quit. I have been coaching for almost 10 years now, and I see this. It happens. And again, I'm not a mental health expert. I can't help you with every single thing in your life. But I'm going to do what I can to help you remember that this is fun. You do this because it's fun. And if you get too serious about it, it kind of stops being fun. There are no ops. There are none. It is you and the bar, right? You have to aim to grow into your own future potential and remember that it is always just you against you and how you did last time. When you show up to a competition or you show up to the gym and you're doing a heavy day or whatever, it is you against you. Nerves are normal. How many of you get nervous at a competition? I still get nervous at a competition. Yeah, that's normal. It means that you care about this. All that means is that you care about it. How you manage those nerves can make or break how the day goes, right? If you allow them to control you, that means your anxiety increases and it prevents you from performing well. But if you learn to control your nerves, you learn how to channel that into excitement, that can make a really great performance day for you. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna read this one at you. Having goals is good. You should have goals. But understand that failure to meet them on your expected timeline is always a possible outcome. And again, the word expectation is in there. If you can detach yourself from the deadlines, you will feel much happier just making progress at your own pace because it is you and the bar. You against you. Identity is a big piece with every athlete. This is not just people your age, this is everyone. Read that one again. Have a rewarding hobby outside of training. Training is a great way to stay healthy, absolutely, but it is still a hobby. These sports are hobbies. If you get injured, having someplace else to lean into it and find more self-worth is really important. Whether it's, I don't know, you knit or crochet or you like to bike with your buddies or whatever it is, having something else can be really useful there. Are you all familiar with the term third space? I'm seeing some yeses, some nos. So like first space is like your home, your family life. Your second space is like work or school. And then your third space is your hobby space, right? Where you kind of go to find another community that's not your family or your work friends. For you, your school friends. So it's okay if the gym is one of your third spaces, but you should have another one, right? Have another community that you find value in and you serve a role in. Take a scientific approach to training. Logic over emotion is going to help you with your longevity and not burning out. Train your brain as much as you train your body. Read some books. I know you all read plenty for your classes. But maybe read for fun in the summertime when you're not actually studying. Go out in nature. Learn a new skill. Do something creative. Make some music. Make some art. Do something else that's not gym rat related. All right. What questions do you guys have? Trinity.
How do you know there's not ops, though?
I think, time and place, but ultimately, you can only do the best that you can do. At the end of the day, you can only do the best that you can do. So it doesn't really matter what someone else is doing, right?
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are these ops that we're talking about?
Oh.
People praying on your downfall.
Yeah, it's like the opposition.
Oh.
Ops means like opposition, like your enemies. Or your competition is another way to think of it. Kat.
What's a good way to decompress after a bad session?
Oh yeah, good question. Does anybody want to answer that? How do you decompress after a bad session? Let's define what is a bad session first. Just like you feel disappointed about how you performed in the session. I loved Damon's recommendation of meditation. It can help with focus, but it can also help with those moments of self-reflection of how did the session really go? Kind of considering all of the variables that went into it, like, did you sleep well? Did you eat well? How's your stress level? And you do a sport where, I swear to God, there's days I just forget how to snatch. And those days are gonna happen, right? And for me, I know they're usually related to when my stress levels are really high. So a hot bath, great way to decompress. A walk in nature, like you said, just do something enjoyable. do something that can kind of help you push through that mentee B, we'll call it. Low-key mentee B. Yeah.
How would you like decide if you should do like a conventional versus sumo deadlift?
Ooh, yeah, that's a specific question. I would look at limb lengths, and I would also look at where someone is already strong in their body. So in a conventional deadlift, you need to have strong hamstrings, strong glutes, and strong erectors, right? In a sumo deadlift, you need strong quads, strong glutes, and strong erectors. So if someone has stronger quads than hamstrings, I might encourage them to move more towards a sumo deadlift. But it also depends. So that's my short answer.
Okay.
You got a question, Ryan?
No.
I see all the, I want to ask a question, but Damon?
So, like, there's a lot of focus on, like, building up your weaknesses. Why not just, like, there's a debate whether you lean into your strengths versus building up your weaknesses.
Yeah, sure. Your weaknesses are always going to hold you back,
Yeah.
even when you lean into your strengths. That can relate to the question about pulling sumo, right? Where we're like, okay, you know, I might have stronger quads than hamstrings, but like if I don't build my hamstrings up, it's going to affect my squat too, right? So we're always doing both. We want to lean into the strengths, but we still need to be building up those weaknesses. Yeah, Caroline?
Let's say you were strong in something and then you feel like as you're training you're becoming weaker in that thing. Is that a process in which you follow the same kind of protocol to rebuild your weakness, or is that a different protocol? Do you get my question?
Sort of. I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Are we talking about a specific lift?
Yeah, like if I say, as you know,
Yeah.
my training,
Mhm.
my bench was really strong.
Mm.
Now it's feeling horrible. That could be because of stress, but it also could be, am I getting weaker in bench? Do you know what I'm saying? Is that like a different way to train? Do I just reduce my volume? How do I go about it?
I think that you've been sick like 3 times in the past 6 weeks. And stress is high. So if you bench press, you know, like bench is always the first one to go when there's some kind of disruption to training. So that's my first response. The other piece of that is I would look back at the protocol that we were doing, because when your bench was really strong, we couldn't squat heavy and we couldn't deadlift heavy. And so you had a lot of energy and fatigue that you could expend on bench press. So that's my short answer, but we could talk more about that later. Yeah, Miller.
Like for an off season for powerlifting, is there any benefit to kind of like entirely excluding your competition like movements for squat, bench, and deadlift, just for kind of like sake of variation and like maybe like a bit of a mental break too?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I realize now on the longevity slide, I should have included, you should take breaks from training. It's okay to take a couple weeks off here or there, or take a month and go do something else, right? If you're a power lifter, do some Olympic weightlifting or like learn some basic stuff. Yes, Miller, definitely. I did a meet last year, and the only squat variation I did until I was 4 weeks out was safety squat bar. And I hit like a 15-pound squat PR at that meet. So yes, there's definitely benefit to that. A big benefit to it is those variations might build up your weaknesses. Wyatt?
How should you go about choosing a weight class, and when do you think it's time to go down or go up?
Yeah. Damon, you want to answer that question?
Don't get too skinny.
Yeah. I think, you know, when someone's first starting out competing, and I know you're a power lifter, when someone's starting out competing, just lift where you are. Lift in whatever weight class you weigh into on that day. You're going to be so nervous those first few competitions that you don't need the added stress of having to make weight on top of that. Damon is a great example of someone who, like, his days as a 67.5 are definitely limited. We're kind of hitting the point where we're achieving diminishing returns in your training, right? Where we're like kind of achieving the limit of what we can, and you're pretty much as lean as we can get at this point, aside from gut cutting and maybe spitting on the day if we have to. So body fat percentage can be a great indicator of that. Moving down versus moving up. Moving down is like, I generally don't recommend it unless there's something at stake, you know, like If you are kind of looking at the actual ops and you're seeing, okay, you know, I can see that my strength is in the same realm as these 5 people who all lift in this weight class, and I'm only, let's say 6-7 pounds over rather than a full 10 kilos or whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna do this a lot, boppity boopy. Then maybe it's worth it. But if you're gonna cut weight, you have to do it a smart way. I'm not a dietitian, so I'm not gonna speak to the details of that. But I think it has to be like worth it to make sense to cut down. I'm generally not a fan of cutting down. Yeah.
I want to avoid a deload week for like as long as possible. Is 3 rest days in like a microcycle? Is that like enough?
I don't know. How many rest days do you normally get?
2.
Probably not.
Oh.
No. Deload weeks, I feel like deload weeks are always a hot topic because coaches feel strongly one way or the other. One of the coaches I look to for mentorship is Mike Tushier. He's the reactive training systems guy. If you're not familiar, look him up. You will learn so much from him. And he uses deload weeks. So highly, highly recommend using deload weeks. Like I mentioned, I use them as a transition week. So when I'm introducing a new block, that's where we're implementing a new skill or a new variation, or for weightlifting, it might be a new complex. And we're gonna introduce that at lightweight first. So it's not like, you know, we're not lifting an empty bar, you know, but we might bring the intensity down to like 65% or 70%, depending on what we're doing. Caroline.
How often in your off season should you be maxing out?
Oof, it's really hard to give you a straight answer to that. It depends on what we're doing. My short answer is always going to be it depends, right? You saw that long list of all the stuff that goes into programming. What are we trying to achieve? I wouldn't be doing something heavy more than once a month, really. But it depends on the lifter and what you can tolerate. So for someone like Wyatt has a pretty high tolerance for lifting heavy. But for someone like me, who's almost 37, like my tolerance for lifting in that kind of RPE range is not as high as his. So there's a lot of context that I would need first. Yes, ma'am.
How do you determine if someone should squat with like heels or just straight flat?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Usually we use, are you a power lifter? Okay. Usually we use heels when someone is really struggling with their ankle mobility. So if you're squatting and you can't push your knees over your toes, I might recommend you wear heels. But typically for me, like if I was that person's coach, I would work on their ankle mobility first and see if we can just work to improve it to try to get us there without having to use the heels. So again, it depends. Sometimes we'll see hip mobility issues too that may require the use of heels. So those are the 2 instances where I would normally recommend them. I'm gonna come back to you because you've already asked one. Yeah.
How do you deal with fear, especially like post-injury?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that question. How do you deal with fear post-injury? How many of you have dealt with this situation before? Yeah, look around the room. This is a really relatable question. And can anyone answer that? Do you have a good strategy for what you did to try to reconquer a weight that may have previously terrified you? What'd you say?
Cried in the car.
Cry in the car. Wow, yeah.
Microloading.
Okay.
I don't know, just keep showing up, and then eventually it just clicks. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I think for me, I will usually work towards percentages that get me near that weight several times. And I might work to the point where I can take those weight for reps. And then when I know, okay, I can take this weight for reps, now I know I can take that other weight for a single and it's gonna be okay. So you do have to kind of scaffold up your confidence, if that makes sense. I like what Kat said too, just keep showing up. You know, you are the only person who can conquer your own fear when it comes to the barbell. And also like use support systems, right? Like if it's a heavy squat, I feel like for powerlifting, it's always squat. That's the scariest for people, even though bench is technically the most dangerous. Get side spotters, you know, get all the spotters around you so that you know, okay, even if I don't win this weight today, I'm going to be okay. Did I answer your question? Did you want to add something else? Okay, I thought you were trying to answer his question. Trini.
I was just also gonna say that,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if this is applicable to everything, but the biggest thing, because I like hurt my back and deadlifting was really scary, and I feel like the biggest thing that helped me were doing heavy holds, where it's like I know I'm not gonna fuck up my back just picking this
Yeah.
weight up an inch, but then putting it at weights that like I had never even picked up before, I think also helped me with like my mindset, where I was like, I've held this weight before, that's crazy.
Yes. So those are called overloading strategies, maximal overloading strategies. Great recommendation. Heavy bench is what scares you, get in a slingshot. And you could take that way for reps in a slingshot, right? And eventually regain that confidence.
I would also say, like, have a varied program, like, do other things that you feel confident in, so you can build up that confidence outside of this one exercise, and then once you're confident outside of that, I don't know, that's what's helped me, I don't know, but.
Yeah. If you don't know, Caroline hurt her back last fall, and we couldn't load her back for a while, but her bench took off. And we were able to maintain and build upon your strength in other ways, right? Things that didn't load you axially. Other questions?
Oh, I don't remember.
All right.
Oh, is it
Yeah.
bad to squat in heels? Like,
No.
even if I'm squatting in heels because of like lack of ankle mobility or hip problems, should I be transitioning over into flats?
I think that's a conversation you and I can have.
But I am kind of curious, like, is it bad to, even if you have ankle mobility, is it then like limiting you if you do squat in heels?
Limiting you? No. It depends on your lever lengths, right? Like someone who has an exceptionally long femur and not a very long shin bone might wear a heel to artificially lengthen the shin bone a bit, to have better balance when they're squatting. So again, it depends, but no, it's not a bad thing. It's okay if you wear heels. Yeah, Miller.
This might be a little bit of like a kind of more like individual question, but like when it comes to cueing for exercises, like how many do you try to think of for an athlete at once who's like, I don't know, maybe struggling for like a squat, getting like pitched forward when they come out of the bottom? Like, do you think of like more than one cue at once, or do you just try to like, I don't know, like force them to do a variation that makes them keep a better position?
Yeah, get them under the SSB. You know, it's you can try cueing someone out of balance issues. Sometimes it works. I generally don't want someone thinking about more than maybe 2 cues at a time. Like in Olympic lifting, I would have a different answer for that. But for something like they're getting pitched forward in their squats, pick the right variation that's going to help them feel where their balance needs to be and strengthen those positions for them. Any other questions, guys? Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. My email's there if you ever want to reach out. Happy to answer any other questions you think of. If you are interested in getting in the interest list for our scholarship program, there is the link. You can just find it if you go direct to our website as well. And then I did want to mention, I know a lot of the Boulder weightlifters have been coming down regularly for Saturday training. We are offering a discounted open gym membership just for college athletes, weeknights after 7, all day Sunday, and then Saturdays after 1 p.m. So if you guys are interested in that, the QR code will take you right there. Thank you, guys.